Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Present here, I, Ashraf Azmi, Assistant Professor, Faculty of Law, Integral University. On behalf of entire Faculty of Law, warmly welcomes you all in 30 days interdisciplinary faculty development program on emerging trends in administration of criminal justice and forensic science. Today, we begin with second technical session of Module 3, and the resource person for today's technical session is Dr. Syed Sajid Hussain Kazmi on the topic International and Comparative Exploration of Behavior and Justice. Dr. Kazmi is a rehabilitation of Council Rehabilitation India, Rehabilitation Council of India registered clinical psychologist. Currently, he is working as assistant professor clinical psychology at Department of Clinical Psychology, Amity Institute of Behavioral and Allied Sciences, Amity University, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. His academic and research interest includes clinical psychology, community mental health, occupational stress, neuropsychology, cognition, education, and communication, legislation, and policy making in mental health care. He has published 17 research papers in reputed and international journals. He has authored textbook of special education and edited 4 books. He is editor of the Journal of Advanced Research in Science and Social Science, a peer-reviewed, refereed, and indexed multidisciplinary international journals. He is a founder director of Indian Mental Health and Research Center. Apart from academic and research, he is actively involved in right to information activism, policy making in various social welfare activities, and associated with several organizations. Without wasting much time, I invite you to
Thank you, Ashraf sir. Thank you for the very detailed introduction. And I am honored to share this platform of your university wherein I can disseminate the information on the comparative exploration on human behavior and justice system. I hope I am audible.
very much audible, sir.
Okay, so with your permission, I can present my
Yes, sir.
PPT and start.
Without any further delay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, sure, sir. Sir, please confirm whether my PPT is visible to you.
Yes. Yes, it's very visible, sir. Behavior and justice.
So,
Okay, sir.
the major theme of today's discussion in this lecture will be the behavior and justice system, and it will be in a comparative mode. That is, we will be having some glimpses of the international perspective, the global perspective, and we will also have some overview of the Indian legal system, Indian criminal system, and how these two systems go hand in hand. What are the pros, what are the cons, and we will have a discussion with reference to certain case studies as well. So before beginning, this is what throughout this time of around 1.5 hour lecture, we will be having some kind of historical perspectives with reference to the legal system, then certain pointers related to the introduction, wherein we will be having a discussion on the behavior system, what is the behavior and a basic understanding of human behavior, followed by an overview of crime, then related to the understanding and the study of criminal behavior, criminology, Then we will be having some discussion on the theories, various biopsychosocial theories in the light of certain psychological models as well. We will try to understand how the human behavior deviates from the so-called normalcy and the societal norms. Followed by, we will be looking into the certain contributions of the psychologist, that is the role of a psychologist in the Indian legal system. Then we will have the comparative analysis, and in the end, we will have the certain case studies to make it complete. To begin with, a basic understanding of what human behavior is. That is the definition of a human behavior. So I hope most of you are aware of the basic understanding about behavior. That behavior can be defined as the actions or reactions of a person in response to external or internal stimuli. Let's take a basic example. That means I want to attend this lecture, or you as a participant want to attend this lecture. And imagine a situation wherein you face a power cut in your home, or there is drop down in the internet facility. Now, because it is in an online mode, what will happen that the behavioral manifestations will be, you might have some kind of stress, some of you might be worrying about it, some of you might get anxious about it, that this is a very important lecture or it is a series of lecture wherein you have to participate in each and every lecture, and accordingly your participation will be considered. So what are the stimuli, the internal as well as external stimuli, and the related outcome of that stimuli is the outcome which is known as behavior. So the field is also known as behavior psychology or behaviorism, means it is a theory suggesting that environment shapes our human behavior. In a most basic sense, behavioral psychology is the study and analysis of the behavior that is very much observable. Now, certain aspects that behavior serves on a purpose and has a reason. That means two components should be there in the behavioral system. One will be your communication, that is, that can be your verbal communication, bodily languages, facial expressions, gestures, or even the silent treatment which we say. Another will be the functional aspect, that is to help or meet a need, attraction, attention. For example, a small child who is unable to communicate, but still he will give you some hints that he is thirsty, he wants some kind of feeding. So all these parts are inclusively considered as the behavioral aspects. Now let's take a look at a holistic view. That is what all comprises the human behavior. So the key understanding of human behavior is to understand why it is occurring, then what is being communicated or what is needed. So the holistic overview is shown in an image. That is, it has three components. One is your cognitive factors, then another aspect is the behavioral factors, followed by the environmental factors. Now, all these three factors amalgamate, and the outcome will be in the form of any kind of human behavior. Now, it can be a negative human behavior or another aspect of the positive human behavior, which we'll be discussing in the upcoming slides. Now let's take an overview of what is crime, certain basic understanding of crime. So crime is generally represented as a breach of rules or laws for which some governing authority via any kind of mechanism such as legal system, they can ultimately prescribe a conviction in any form, a kind of sentencing, a kind of some kind of penalty or whatever way they feel it fine. Also, to label the individual as criminal or some kind of offender, it is part of the societal system wherein there is some stigma attached, and accordingly it can be part of the corrective measures. Now, there is certain historical perspective attached to it, that starting from the very historic era in which there was the consideration of divine origin theory, that was in the purview of, okay, God has created this whole universe, and ultimately God has vested his own authority into the certain rulers, certain kings, and whatever they say, it will be part of their authority, and whatever they say, whatever they do, will be part of the justice system. So anything which is going against to the rulings or the orders of the ruler or the king will be part of any kind of criminal activity. Any kind of deviance will be considered as a criminal offense. Ultimately, that form changed, and gradually, once the society developed into a so-called society and people started living together, then there was another perspective, and that was the social contract theory, wherein group of people, some intellectual minds, they came up together and formulated certain rules and regulations, certain do's and don'ts. what to do, what not to do, or in what situation, what was the desirable behavior and what is the undesirable behavior. Accordingly, they formulated certain rules and regulations, and whosoever defied them was labeled as some kind of criminal offender. Then we can consider the books by Dr. Walter Bromberg, in which he defined some certain aspect of crime and mind. That is the name of the book. And he said that antisocial behavior, we have to, in order to understand the antisocial behavior, we have to focus on the outcome of human interaction and as well as the requirement or the demand from the internal and external society. That is the, it is again the part of the you can say the interaction between the human behavior as well as the environment, the society. So in that perspective again, that was explained by Dr. Walter Bloomberg. Then another aspect, gradually when the society started developing more often, then there was another aspect of certain kind of mental illnesses, some kind of personality traits were also under consideration. We will have a look in the upcoming slides as well. Now take a look towards what is criminology, because we have to, in connection with the human behavior, and we have to understand both these aspects. So criminology is the definition, if you go by the definition, that it is the study of the crime, the study of crime. Uh, you can refer to that French anthropologist Paul Topinard. He said that he is said to be the first originator or the individual who is credited with the coining of the term criminology in the year 1889 to differentiate the study of criminal body types within the field of anthropology. So the word again, it is a Latin word and it means accusation, charge or guilt, and logy, as we all know, that it is the study of something. So together we can refer to as criminology or the study of crime. Now, Sutherland suggested that criminology consists of three principal divisions. And what are they? The first is sociology of the law, that what are the aspects of the law, what are the do's and don'ts in that particular situation, what are the set of rules and legislations or the regulations which have been drafted to safeguard the welfare of the individuals. So that is part of the sociology of law. Another aspect, the second division, is about scientific analysis of the causes of crime. That means evidence-based analysis. Evidences we need to seek for whether there was any kind of modus operandi, whether there was the uh, mode was there, and ultimately we have some kind of evidence of that particular crime. Accordingly, that we can analyze it in the purview of scientific literature. And the third will be your crime control, that what are the mechanisms, the penology all apart, that what are the things through which we as a whole, as a collectivist or the law enforcement agencies are taking out, what are the measures they are taking out to control the prevalence of the criminal offenses in the particular society. So accordingly, we can conclude that criminology is an interdisciplinary science which includes sociology, psychology, psychiatry, biology, political science, as well as social work and some aspects of the economy. So these are the pointers which you need to refer about the criminology. Now let's take a look at what all talks about criminal behavior. So as per the definition, anything or it is a conduct of an offender that leads to the commission of an unlawful act. An unlawful act occurs when there is a motive, a mean, and an opportunity. In short, there should be mens rea, actus reus, and modus operandi. Uh, I have stated certain points from authors Morley and Hall. They have stated in their 2003 literature that investigated the genetic influences on criminal behavior, and they also pointed towards three different ways to define the antisocial behavior. First of all, it is to equate it with the criminality and delinquency. Now, there are two different terms, interrelated terms, which we should know here. That is the criminality and delinquency. So, criminality means both are again related with the criminal acts, but criminality mainly deals to the arrest or conviction or incarceration of the individuals who are in the adult category, whereas the delinquency term is mostly related to the individuals who are under juvenile category. Whenever they are involved in any kind of activities which are against the law. So accordingly, these information can be collected using the court and criminal records, as well as self-report surveys can also be used. The second way is about the to define the antisocial behavior through criteria to use to diagnose certain personality disorders. Now the second and the third point are interrelated in a way wherein certain aspect of the personality traits, maybe the personality disorder, for example the antisocial personality disorder, or the certain traits of personality, for example impulsivity, aggressiveness, and all these things, which may be directly involved or which may directly lead an individual towards committing a crime, or they can be a part of the in a very lucid way, not the very direct involvement, but in certain way they have certain kind of causal factor. It can be one of the causal factor in the committing of a particular crime. So there might be certain kind of mental illness, certain personality related disorder, or certain personal specific personality traits as well. Now let's take a look at the origins of certain criminal behavior. We will have two aspects. One is the early explanation, then we gradually we will move towards the current and the more updated information. So first of all, the basic understanding, again in the historic era we can say that initially or in the very early era it was known as, or just like in the cases of mental illnesses, that certain demonic possession is there. Whatever bad or whatever unwanted activities the individual manifested, either it was certain kind of demonic possession. This was the same kind of explanation which was used in the explanation of mental illnesses, or the otherwise criminal behaviors. Secondly, it was again certain kind of theories were formulated regarding the physical shape of the body or the body shape. That is the, for example, I have mentioned here that criminals have typical body shapes marked by huge jaws, asymmetrical face, large ears, etc. So these are certain typical features. These are all based on the evidences which was presented in those particular eras. So that means any individual who was fitting into this kind of description of the body and physical shape, they might have certain kind of criminal tendency. The third aspect was about mental retardation. Now, there are two contradictory points with reference to intelligence or intellectual functioning. One line of perspective, one line of opinion talks about that individuals who possess this kind of criminal tendencies, or who are involved in some kind of criminal behavior, they have certain level of mental retardation. That is, their intellectual level or intellectual functioning is on a bit lower side. Whereas the other line of literature, it talks about that the intellectual functioning or the intellectual ability as compared to others is on a higher side. That is why they are part of the organized criminal syndicate, for example. So both line of opinions are available, and it is up to us to decide. Another aspect is about the rational choice, which talks about that criminal decisions are the result of rational choice. A well-planned, foolproof, thought-based planning has been there. And accordingly, the rewards can be emotional as well as the financial. So based on whatever the rewards, because again, any action, any behavior tends towards some kind of reward. Maybe it is an emotional or it is a financial aspect. So accordingly, the offenders have to weigh their personal needs against the difficulty and the risk of committing the crime. So there is a chance that individuals will weigh in what is the risk, the calculations, how much risk is there, how much opportunity is there, how much reward is there, and accordingly they are indulging into that particular crime. And ultimately, there is another aspect is of fear of punishment, that any kind of swift and certain punishment will definitely deter the rate of criminal offenses. Also, it will be a kind of thing, it is the best way to control the crime as per certain literature. Uh, Now, what about let's have a look at the biopsychosocial perspective as well, because whenever we talk about the behaviors or the criminal behaviors, we have to consider it in a very holistic manner. So, beginning with the biological model as the one of the perspective. So, biological model or the biological theories, they emphasize on the role of genetics, that is the hereditary component. A lot of literature is available on the studies done in the generations, maybe the individuals whose the criminal tendency runs in the family, for example. So there might be certain kind of genetic predisposition, genetic loading, or some kind of genetic linkages which have been established to, and accordingly the individual follows the footstep of the parents. Another aspect is of psychophysiology, that is certain aspect of the brain and bodily functions. And the last is about the neurological functioning. Nowadays, the imaging techniques and the brain scanning techniques have given a certain kind of scientific literature which suggests that there is some kind of deviance, some kind of difference in the brain functioning, some kind of neuronal connections are different in the individuals who are involved in certain kind of heinous crimes. So maybe the individuals who are involved in violent crimes, the criminals who have been, or the repeated offenders. So they might have certain kind of different setup in their neurological functioning system, and accordingly their behavior is manifested in that particular way. Similarly, there have been literature, a lot of literature related to twin studies, that whether the society or whether the individual who has genetic loading, if he or she is being given some kind of upbringing in a different environmental setup. So whether the criminal tendency will be there or not, whether it will be manifested in the individual in their adulthood or not. So a lot of literature is available as well in these aspects. Another aspect is about the male and female ratio. That is, the males have a higher tendency for physical aggression than females due to the presence of higher level of testosterone as well as an extra Y chromosome. That is the XYY in certain cases of genetic differences, anomalies. Another theory, another group of theory is the psychological theories, because we are referring to the biopsychosocial model, biological, psychological, and social concepts. So, psychologically speaking, first part is comprises of psychodynamic perspectives, wherein it is the phenomenal work. It is based on the Freud's phenomenal work, wherein the references to the id, ego, and superego. That is id, the pleasure principle, the ego, the reality principle, whereas the superego talks about the conscience, the moral value, the right versus wrong. And also it puts an say a very high weightage, or the high emphasis is on the early childhood experiences. That is, whatever experiences an individual has faced in the childhood, that is manifested in the early adulthood as well. And another statement related to it is that criminals or the individuals who are involved in certain kind of criminal offenses, they have very their weak egos as well as their personality is often found to be maladjusted. The other theory in this connection is the behavior theory. It simply says about, that is again part of the behaviorism, that people aren't born with violent tendencies, but the behavior is learned, whether it is aggression, whether it is the other aspects of the criminal behavior, but most of it is learned behavior. The very famous example or very famous experiment is of the Bobo experiment, which was part of the Albert Bandura's experiment. That there was a child and he observed that a doll is being hit by several aspects were there in the experiment. I'm not going into the deeper understanding, but you can see the representation in the image as well. So whatever a child or a growing up child sees, because learn modeling, through modeling the behaviors are learned. So whether it is a violent behavior or any other behavior, the individual or the child tends to learn all these things, whichever is prominently manifested in the family. So if there is a violent behavior in the family, the individual will learn all these things from the family members, from the environmental experiences, and accordingly he or she will manifest it as per the requirement. Another aspect is of the cognitive theories, which focuses on the mental processes, higher mental functioning. So it focuses on how people view the world around them and how they solve the related problems. It also focuses on the stages of moral development, which I will be discussing in the next slide. It does not reflect the mental ability, but rather faulty information processing system. So by going by this theory, the explanation for the criminal tendencies or criminal behaviors is that only that individuals who are involved in this kind of offenses or the criminal offenders, their information processing system is at fault. They do not perceive the system, or they inform the processing of the various information, the stimuli they gather from the environment, their society. That is some kind of faulty mechanism, and accordingly their overall behavior is maladaptive. These are the stages of moral development given by Kohlberg and the stages can be seen here for your reference, that the various age ranges are there, that is infancy, preschool, school, and up to the adulthood, and what are the descriptions accordingly. So it has a lot of weightage whenever we try to analyze or we try to understand why an individual behaved in this particular way. There has to be he or she is, whether it is following the description of the age range as defined by the development theories, or it is there is some kind of deviance in it. Coming to the theories of criminal behavior, special reference to the criminology theories. So first is the sociological theories, wherein the sociological theories, they emphasize on the role of various societal factors like the social class, poverty, and social inequality, which might be the contributing factors toward a kind of criminal behavior. Similarly, the socioeconomic status, education system, occupation, level of occupation, kind of income, and the characteristics of the neighborhood might also impact an individual, and he or she may be indulging in some kind of criminal behavior. As per studies, as per the literature, lower socioeconomic status is highly linked with the higher rate of crime. You can refer to this particular model I'm showing here, that social disorganization theory is one of the theories which very beautifully explain the whole dynamics, certain aspects of the population characteristics, then the family instabilities, there is some kind of interpersonal disturbances ongoing in the family, then the residential mobility, maybe the individual, for example, the refugees, some certain kind of rights, certain kind of disturbances in the society, and the whole group of individual or the society has to migrate. So these kind of sociological factors may be some kind of contributing factors. Another aspect is about the collective efficacy, for example, the local social ties, the integration, the social fabric, the integration of the individuals in the society. And if that social fabric is disturbed, then ultimately it will lead towards violence, some certain kind of criminal tendencies, as well as a fear of organized crime, and it will lead to social disorganization and ultimately lead towards involvement in certain aspects of the crime. So this is how the social tendencies or the social organization and disorganization paves way for an individual to manifest some kind of criminal activities. Another aspect of the theories is psychosocial theories, wherein I have referred to in the previous slide as well. I have referred to Albert Bandura's experiment of the social learning, that certain aspect of the behavior are learned and accordingly they will be manifested. They might be manifested in some kind of criminal way as well. Eight categories have been mentioned here as well. That eight categories of risk factors are proposed. That is an early onset of antisocial behavior. So these are the risk factors, or it can be you can classify it as the red flags also. That anything which is being seen in our upcoming children or the young adults. So if they are portraying or displaying certain kind of things which are mentioned here, so it can be considered as a red flag for the counseling, and all these professional services can be required for these students in the educational setups as well. So first is that an early onset of antisocial behavior, not only the particular antisocial behavior, but the ODD condition, the conduct disorder, the oppositional defiance behavior as per the latest classification of ICD. So all these traits, if there are in the individual, he or she might need some kind of professional support. Another category or the risk factor may be the temperament and personality, which is conducive to criminal activity. Another is antisocial attitudes and beliefs. Next is association with peers who are pro-crime and isolation from non-criminal peers. For example, an individual who is part of a group which has certain kind of history of criminal tendencies, of criminal behavior. So once an individual is part of that group, ultimately he or she might be feeling isolated from the other groups, and ultimately he will join that particular group, and due to the maybe group conformity, he or she might be involved in that particular crime committed by that particular group. Another factor might be negative parenting and family experiences. This will also include the early childhood maladaptive experiences as well. Then low levels of achievement in the school or occupation. Again, it is also very much the reward system associated with the achievement. So continuously an individual is not able to achieve, and ultimately it will develop into a kind of negative self-esteem, negative overview of the individual, and self-concept will be there, and ultimately the child may be drifted towards the antisocial activities. Then another factor will be poor use of leisure time, low levels of involvement in pro-social leisure activities. The social activities, we also say that the co-curricular activities and all these things in the academic setups. So individuals, if they are not meaningfully associated with these activities, they might show some kind of deviance and ultimately tend towards the antisocial activities. And the last is abuse or the substance dependence. It is again very much linked that those who have this kind of habit formation, they have certain kind of need or indulgence in the substance abuse, they reflect certain or tendencies towards or certain they are at risk to be part of this kind of antisocial activities. Here is a model which depicts the biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors, and the interplay and how these factors are manifesting and overall communicating and leading towards a criminal tendency, or ultimately the individual is involved in criminal behavior. So biological factors may be drug abuse and alcohol abuse, the overall substance abuse, whereas psychological factors, there are a lot of factors including the personality factors, the dark triad, then social desirability is one of the things, even including the group conformity, peer conformity. Then again, personality factors, the type of personality, hostility, impatience, anger, competitiveness, and overall moral factors. Whereas the sociological factors or the social factors include race, gender, age, income, education, marital status, socioeconomic status, parental criminal history, parental drug use, family unit growing up, and the parenting style as well. So all these factors have an interplay and ultimately guide or misguide an individual towards indulging in a criminal behavior. Here is another model which specifically talks about the parental involvement with criminal justice system. So you have to give it a look with a perspective of a child whose parents are involved in certain kind of criminal justice system. Maybe they are incarcerated or maybe they are undergoing trial. So there are certain factors, certain risk factors, certain other protective factors as well, and ultimately the outcome is there. So in the left side, you can see that current involvement of other family members with the criminal justice system, certain parental psychopathology, if not indulging in substance use, domestic violence, and the socioeconomic status. These are the major factors which are again mediated by the disruption to childcare, if there is any kind of childcare support system, then change in the financial system leading towards, and also the stigma associated within the society. Then there are certain risk and protective factors as well. So age, gender, prenatal factors, cardiovascular issues, cortisol, stress hormone, the level of intelligence, intellectual functioning, health status, and other factors. I am not going to list all of it due to constraint of time. So all these factors are either part of the risk factor or the protective factors. And you can see on the right side that all these factors once mediating each other, and the outcome will be in the form of either the child develops certain kind of psychopathology, or he or she might indulge in substance abuse, which might also be part of the functional impairment of the child. It will also lead to maybe truancy from school, the low scholastic achievement. Individual might be part of the high risk behavior, and ultimately the individual or the child may be involved with the juvenile justice system as well. So this is how all the factors have an interplay, and ultimately they regulate the overall behavior, and ultimately the child might be fall into the problematic child category. Now moving towards the psychologist contribution to the legal system, that is, what are the psychological components in the Indian legal system, or first of all, let's take a global purview. So you can see on the screen that psychologists contribute to the legal system in the following ways. First will be part of the expert testimony. Uh, Individuals who have vast experience in the field, or those who have uh, dealt with certain cases, they might be required to present their expert opinion in a particular case, and in front of the judges, in front of the jury or the judicial system, wherein they have to evaluate, wherein they have to give their evidence or certain kind of opinion, which might help up to come to a conclusive decision. So this is part of the expert testimony. Another will be the amicus curiae briefs, whereas the amicus curiae refers to friend of the court. This happens when there is some kind of confusion, some kind of problems or there is some kind of lack of information, so the courts might appoint certain professionals, certain group of individuals, certain organizations who are very professional in nature, and they have their own expertise in that particular matter, so they will be involved to discuss and to provide certain meaningful inputs so that the particular case may be move forward or may be decided. So accordingly they are also referred to as friend of the court. Now there are certain other aspects, that is the understanding of the crime with reference to psychological overview. That is the understanding the psychology of a crime. First is the bystander effect. I think I hope that all of you are aware of this effect. That it can be explained with an example. That there is a you are going on a road and on one trisection or there is a lot of people there and you go to the point there and you see that a lot of individuals are there and one individual is fallen or slipped from a motorbike and he has received certain injuries, but the greater the size of the audience, the greater number of people on the road, accordingly, it is by this particular theory that the least individual will be interested to help. So this is referred to as bystander effect. That higher the number of the individuals involved in the audience, least will be the support system, because more of the individuals feel that okay, there are a lot of people and certain individuals from the group might help the individual, and most of them lead the way and they move ahead. Another will be social facilitation. For example, it refers to a person, that person's performance on well-learned tasks may be enhanced by the heightened arousal caused by the presence of others within antisocial peer group. Deviant behavior might be considered as a normative. For example, there is a group of individual, or we can understand this whole concept with the view of social desirability. Whenever we are having any kind of interaction, wherever we are on a very heightened arousal state is there,
Sorry for the inconvenient. Our speaker will join soon. Keep patient, please.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir, audible. I have announced already that due to some technical issue, you have disconnected with us, but not an issue, sir.
Yes, actually, I couldn't know, and I was just in a flow, and I was in the flow and giving the lecture, and I didn't knew that it has
Hmm.
disconnected. Anyway,
Disconnected. But anyways, sir, not an issue, sir. You please carry on, sir. Please.
okay, sir. So now there are certain strategies, certain interventions which we can imply to reduce the recidivism because as we discussed in the previous slides as well, that the major goal is to reduce recidivism. That is, the once an individual comes out of the prison, he or she should be a transformed individual and his activities should be transformed so that he is not involved again in any kind of crime. So there are certain aspects which have been there, certain therapeutic activities which can be done. One is the therapeutic communities. That means these are formed to encourage a holistic living towards healthier, more adaptive style of living. Another is the cognitive approaches, which is this is employed in the prisons, wherein it encourages the professionals. They encourage the client to become aware of their thoughts, their beliefs, and if there is any kind of maladaptive belief system, the professionals support them to work and to develop more adaptive patterns of their thought and response. So accordingly, any kind of here we are referring to the cognitive biases and cognitive errors, and that has to be corrected professionally. Similarly, if there is any kind of offending behavior and ultimately it has to be again corrected, there means they try to facilitate in a way more adaptive ways of thinking and behaving. So as an individual or the offender, they have to adapt to the ways and accordingly their thinking and behavioral pattern have to be modified. This is again implied, or this is again done using the cognitive behavioral approaches. This model has been very much used in the United Kingdom, United States of America, and Canada, and other countries are following the suit. And they are these kind of models or the programs, corrective programs, are employed in all these regions. Another aspect is reasoning and rehabilitation. That means the individuals are being trained into the or so that they can inculcate the habit of lateral thinking, social and interpersonal skills, values-based education, cognitive and behavioral skills. So all these skills, all these tendencies are being taught and trained to them so that the individuals, again, after their serving their time period, they are transformed into a better individual. Now, what will be the process of correction system? Again, as I talked about, that we will be having some kind of comparative overview. So previously we talked about the system which is followed in the US, UK, Canada, and what are the aspects, what are the correctional measures or the systems which are in place in India. Let's have a brief look into it. So the methods of penology, they underwent several changes because gradually by the modification, by the certain amendments in the law, time to time as per the need, there has been certain modifications, and ultimately there has been a paradigm shift from punitive to therapeutic. Because just now, as I said, that one motive of the imprisonment is not only to just put it the, or to incarcerate the individual or to cut it off from the society, but also there is some kind of therapeutics involved so that we can transform the individual, reform. We should try to bring some kind of reform in the individual. So the first aspect is about reformation. So the model prison manual, which was released by the modified version, which was released by the Ministry of Home Affairs, it parrots that the worn out rhetoric that reformation is at the core of criminal justice system. The motive behind imprisonment is not only to bring the individual but also to bring a moral reform in the offender. The reformative theory wants to strengthen the character of the man so that they may not become an easy victim to his own temptation, which according to it is the appropriate medicine. So as per this statement, that not only putting behind the bars will be the option or will be the solution, but we have to employ certain techniques, certain therapeutic techniques, certain measures, so that the individual is reformed whenever he is serving the term. And accordingly, the Indian justice system, the reformation comes with a carrot and stick approach, wherein incentives such as premature release, parole system, remission, they are often offered as reward for good behavior in prison, which is meant to fulfill the ultimate goal of penitentiary system. There is a case study which I was talking about, that we will have a look at certain cases. So there was one case, that is Pol Singh versus the state of Haryana. In this particular case, Jawahar Thakkar, he was a convict, and he was charged for rape. But later on there was a sense of guilt in him, and for the same, the family of the girl as well, the victim, they have also forgiven him. So, and ultimately the individual was the prime of his youth as well. So we, keeping all these points in mind, considering all these things, the jury also found that there was no antecedent case, and accordingly they realized that this his action was wrong and was awarded correction by reducing 2 years of his imprisonment. He was set an example of reformation. Providing him a chance of correction would deliver a society a pragmatic and useful member. So these were the wordings, and based on that, they reduced the 2 years sentence. And ultimately, because that individual, he has shown sense of guilt and all these aspects which have been considered. So accordingly, a kind of reward was given to him by reducing the 2 years of in 2 years from the sentence. Provision for reformation of punishment is made to prevent recidivism. Provision is made for a system of probation for first offenders. In the case of Ratan Lal versus State of Punjab, again, the same was ingrained. This theory is progressively being adopted in the case of juvenile offenders. So, I am sure you all have been dealing with juvenile offenders as well. The correctional facilities, the Juvenile Justice Care Act also provides for this reformative system, that wherever there is a child in conflict with law, he or she will be dealt accordingly, not as per an adult offender, but there are certain reforms, certain things with which we need to ensure the reformation in a correctional facility for that particular individual. So these are the mandates or the certain rulings or the decisions by the jury and the judicial system which have set up precedents. The another aspect of the criminal system is about the rehabilitation. First was the reformation, another is to rehabilitation. That means to rehabilitate the offender in order to empower and enable the reintegration into the society after release from prison. Therefore, rehabilitation measures need to go beyond mere vocational training and education. Unfortunately, in the Indian rehabilitation system, especially for the jail and judicial system and the correctional facilities, there is a requirement to go beyond this kind of vocational training, wherein the individuals or the offenders or under trials are put up for maybe making some handicraft items or some kind of paperwork, some kind of artistic activities and all these things. But there is a scope to go beyond that. So this is one requirement which has to be put up, and certain evidences have to be found that what other aspects can be included in that particular rehabilitative approach and training program. So you can see that in the Indian system, rehabilitation is restricted to providing vocational training and education to the offender, which will allow them to gain employable skills. One aspect is again of rehabilitation is that to give them certain kind of skills which make them employable, that whenever they complete their tenure in the jail, whenever they complete their sentence and they are free to go, so once they go out in the society to gel in with the society, to amalgamate with the society, they need certain kind of financial security, and that financial security will be only possible when they are employed and they have certain kind of employable skills. So why not to put them in certain kind of training program, certain kind of vocational skill program, so that they can utilize this particular training once they go out. So certain aspects are there that these skills can be assisting the inmate in securing post-release source of livelihood. Also, there should be certain system to provide the counseling services, because once the individual is in the jail, the environment or the living condition is entirely different. The hygienic things, the hygiene, the fooding habits, the routine there is entirely different. And once the individual is free to go into the society, go back to the society, there might be certain kind of adjustment issues, certain kind of stigma, discrimination, and all these mental health issues and concerns can be there. So the individual might be in a position to, and he or she is unable to deal with all these challenges in a day-to-day activity, in a day-to-day basis. So in order to provide these or to deal with all these issues, deal with all these challenges, there has to be certain point where the individual can go for counseling services. And this can be again for general services, general population, or certain kind of individualized, specialized setup wherein that these kind of individuals can approach for their counseling services and they can get benefited. The third aspect is about post-release follow-ups. That is to ensure that they don't return to committing crimes, because we are continuously talking about reducing the recidivism. That means that individual should not follow the footsteps in which he was following earlier. He or she should not go back after release from the prison to committing the crimes again. So that means the recidivism should be at a particular level, and in order to prevent the individuals, there should be some certain kind of follow-up activities as well. The last aspect will be about reintegration, that is the reintegration into the society. So as per the American criminal correction system, the process of reintegration is considered extremely crucial, but no significant attention is given to such methods of correction in India. At most, they provide for a few rehabilitation courses and job where they are manhandled and are not paid even the minimum wages. So this is again a kind of exploitation and certain kind of uh, there has to be certain things to address these issues as well. For example, the challenges in what are the certain challenges which are there, which have been found or reported as per the literature that in which are available in the reintegration process. First thing is about the skill deficits that makes it difficult for them to compete and succeed in the community. Once an individual is in the jail or is incarcerated, so he or she faces certain kind of skill deficits. And what are the certain deficits? They are represented in the form of poor interpersonal skills, maybe low levels of formal education, illiteracy, innumeracy. It can also be in the form of poor cognitive or emotional functioning, and or a lack of planning and financial management skills. So these, as per the various published literature, scientific literatures, which I have reviewed, these are the certain skill deficits which make the reintegration of an individual into a very challenging and Herculean task. So these tend to hamper their ability to reintegrate into the society upon release. And in order to effectively reintegrate the individuals, these are certain areas in which interventions or management planning has to be done, whether by the counseling services or by other professional support system. In the last, I would comment upon, or I would conclude by giving an overview of various committees for prison reforms in India. So the first, I have started with the Indian Jail Reform Committee, the Macaulay and Minutes of 1835, which was responsible for laying down the foundations of the prison system in India. The second was Justice Mullah Committee. The Mullah Committee was set up in 1980s to review the laws, rules, and regulations for protecting society and reforming offenders. The committee opined that the government was duty bound to provide dignified living conditions for prisoners. Another committee, the Justice Krishna Iyer Committee, the Iyer Committee, it highlighted the plight of women prisoners and suggested the need to induct more women into the police service and management. It suggested a gender-sensitive approach in prison management. Justice Roy Committee, it also made recommendations with respect to issues such as overcrowding in prison and correctional homes, and recommended remedial measures. The last Justice Malimat Committee, the committee suggested reforms such as replacing the death penalty into life imprisonment without commutation or remission. So these are the certain points, certain aspects which I wanted to highlight in my discussion, through my discussion. And I understand that due to certain technical glitch, at certain aspect, I might not be audible to all of you. But still, I hope it was comprehensible and you all could get benefited. Thank you very much.
Mm. Thank you, sir. It was very exhaustive session. I have seen and I have watched in every aspect you have discussed about. Sir, there are various questions asked by the participants and the students. So I will ask the one by one questions. So please detail this,
Sure, sir.
answer these questions. So the first question is how you see the Sutherland's theory, that is the differential association theory, under the heads of criminal behavior justice system.
Can you repeat, sir? I couldn't get you. Your voice is cracking.
Sir, how you see the differential association theory under the head of criminal behavior justice system.
As per my understanding, am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir. Very odd.
Yeah, as per my understanding, this theory is it talks about the core reason or the core factors why an individual is part of any crime syndicate or why an individual commits a crime. So it mainly focuses on the social ties or the relationships among the individual. That means, as I gave an example in one of my slides, that if an individual is part of any association or any peer community or peer group which is directly involved in certain kind of criminal activities. So by default, being part of that particular committee or that particular peer group or that gang, so the peer conformity has to be there, and by default, the individual will be associated with that particular crime syndicate.
Okay.
So
Okay.
accordingly, because this theory also explains that based on the idea that criminals commit crimes based upon their association with their people. So that group
Okay.
conformity is there, and based on that, the individual is part of the crime. This is also evident in our day-to-day activities in the educational setups as well, wherein there is one group,
Okay.
one or two child who is having some kind of notorious behavior and some kind of misbehavior in the classroom, for example. But he or she has certain kind of group, and due to the group
Group.
conformity, other individuals, other students also get attracted towards it, and they are also part of that particular notorious activity.
Okay, sir. Next question is, sir, something is related to this first question only. To what extent you have talked about the social disorganization theory? Is it related to the differential association theory? Is it, or both are
Yes,
different things?
in one, yes, in one aspect again, because this social disintegration theory I have referred to is from I just forgot the name of the research paper, but I found it pertinent to the theory. So that this theory and the diagram which I referred to, if you remember that, so it is one of the aspect that
Yes,
an
yes.
individual peer support system. If we talk or we consider it as a holistic approach, then there are certain other factors, but definitely one factor is of the peer support or group conformity, definitely.
Okay, sir. Sir, you have used the term recidivism. Students
Yes.
has asked the, please, sir, elaborate what does it means in the
Recidivism simply
lay
means
some.
that,
Yes.
Acharya, yes, please, sir, please repeat so that I can continue.
Sir, student has asked the, please elaborate the term recidivism.
Yes, sure. It is a term which is used. Uh, am I audible, right?
Yes.
Yes. So it is just a concept which refers to the repeated crimes. That means an individual who has been part of some kind of criminal offense or who has committed some crime, and he or she has served the term in a jail, incarcerated, and now he or she is back. Now, as per this concept, we need to, or the correctional mechanism or the judicial system needs to make some kind of changes, some kind of things in the system so that that particular individual does not go back to committing that particular crime or any other crime. So that means that repeated offender wala thing has to be avoided or prevented. So this is the part of the recidivism.
Sir, it's my personal question. Sir, can I ask?
Mhm.
one question.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you have talked about the rehabilitation aspect.
Yes.
Actually, my concern also is related to my actually my PhD topic is related to the rehabilitation. So, sir,
Ji.
it's a very genuine that it is a myth to think about the crimeless society. So,
Yes.
we are talking about the rehabilitation of offenders and all that. Why we don't much lean towards the rehabilitation of victims?
Yes. This is very pertinent question, of course. Uh, as far as my limited knowledge allows me to share with you that nowadays there is for example, if we talk about the certain class of victims, certain categories of victims. So there is now
Yes,
a provision to safeguard their. Maybe first thing is that if there is a victim in the juvenile state, that is individual who has been, for example, assaulted or violated, and that individual is a child. So first thing, the anonymity. You cannot release publicly the name of the child. The identity has to be not to be revealed. Then certain aspect of the rehabilitation, the counseling, and all these things are there. Similarly, if there is a female who has been violated, who has been assaulted, and all these things, so the anonymity, the that their name and their identity has not to be disclosed. So certain aspects are of course there, but yes, as your concern is very much pertinent, that lot more can be done, because we are at one stage, we are dealing with the individuals who have violated the law, who have committed certain crimes, and we are of course going for correcting or reforming them. But what about the major population who has been at the receiving end?
effective.
Of course, we need to look in a more holistic and more systematic way. That is a very pertinent question, and much has to be done.
Yes. Uh, sir, end with these questions. Now, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for this session on the behalf of the entire FDP team and the Faculty of Law, Integral University. I convey my deep regard to your today's lecture, sir. It was a very informative and knowledgeable session. Thank you once again, sir. Thank you so much for this lecture.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the platform, and thank you for patient listening.
Yes, sir.
It was nice
You are most
talking to
welcome,
you.
sir.
Yeah. I hope if you could share certain feedback from your audience, because it is again, we are not used
Yes,
to this kind of
yes, sir.
lectures. It becomes
We are
very monotonous.
using.
So I would
Yes, sir.
love to have the feedback from the audience as well. If you could, if
Inshallah,
it
sir.
is easy and
We are
convenient for
doing,
you.
with this, yes, sir. We are doing with this.
Sure, sir.
So we will
Thank you very
share the
much.
feedbacks. Okay, sir. Okay. Have a good.
Okay, sure. Thank you, sir. May I leave the meeting, sir?
Yes, sir. You may, sir.
Thank you.